Welcome everyone to the Apprenticeship Illinois webinar series. Today we'll be hearing from LWIA 3 on promising practices in their area. Before we dive into the presentation, just want to go over a few housekeeping notes to ensure a smooth experience for everyone. First, note that this will be recorded and posted on the website later this week. We encourage you to stay on mute to minimize distractions during the presentation. If you do have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to enter them into the chat, and we'll do our best to address those questions either throughout the presentation or at the end of the webinar as time allows. Lastly, there will be a survey as the webinar concludes, and so any feedback that you're able to offer on that survey will help us improve future events and let us know if today's session was helpful. And then with that, we will transition into a quick poll to see who's in attendance today. I'll let Nate take it on as far as the purpose of today's session and what Apprenticeship Illinois is for.
Sure. Thanks, Jordan. And sorry to hold up the show for everybody. I always like to do an intro, talk a little bit about Apprenticeship Illinois and our regional specialists. Of course, you're going to hear from Bernice and her team today, who are excellent examples of our apprenticeship specialists. One of the state's top priority for these teams is the creation of new apprenticeship programs. That includes completing all necessary registration paperwork on behalf of program sponsors to create a simple, streamlined process for apprenticeship registration. We know employers sometimes worry about registration with DOL or with the bureaucratic hurdles. And so our apprenticeship specialists are there to minimize all of that and create a quick and easy process for getting a program up and running. So they conduct in-person and virtual apprenticeship outreach through events and employer consultations, whether that's one-on-ones or events in the local community. They receive and pursue the referrals we receive to our incredible apprenticeshipillinois.com website. Check it out if you haven't already. And they connect employers to other valuable intermediary partners and applicable services in their area, providing localized support. And they collaborate with other members of their integrated business service team for greater collective impact in their region. If you'd like to find an apprenticeship specialist in your area, again, please check out apprenticeshipillinois.com and visit the Workforce Partners page. Thanks. I'll hand it over to Jordan.
Yeah. So again, just want to introduce and thank our speakers for coming in today. Bernice from the Workforce Connection and Karen McDonald from the Elevate program. Glad to have you both here, and I will hand it off to you two to showcase all the good work you're doing.
Thank you. All right. Well, like Jordan and Nate said, my role at the Workforce Connection has been basically being that liaison between the employers and and DOL to create and expand apprenticeships in our region. I initially started working just with the apprenticeship program and learning everything there is to learn about apprenticeships and WIA funding and how we can marry those together. So it's been a really fun experience trying to get to learn both and then also collaborating with our team. So just kind of jumping in to why an apprenticeship. So I originally, I am a licensed clinical social worker. So I received a bachelor's in social work and a master's in social work. And in addition to that, had to do a bunch of clinical hours in order to receive my clinical license. And in the process, I had to do 3,000 hours of internship as an undergrad and 3,000 hours of internship as a graduate student, and all of those were unpaid. And so, knowing that and understanding a little bit of the learn and earn model was really enticing. Obviously I wasn't able to take advantage of that, but helping others being able to do that has been very rewarding. So to start off, apprenticeships, when we're talking to employers and we're talking about all the benefits to employers about apprenticeships, we talk about it being business led. There's customized training, that mentorship piece, earn and learn model, and then earning your credentials at the end of that journey. Employers can build their own talent pipeline. This ensures that the employer is developing skills and workers that are tailored to their specific business needs. Upskilling the existing workforce to enhance already existing organization expertise and foster that career growth, which has been correlated with higher rates of employee retention. Also, the access to incentive to apprenticeship support. So what that basically means and what I have generally worked on is using that WIOA funding, whether it's WEXs or OJTs or incumbent worker training, to expand or grow those apprenticeships, in addition to that grant funding that we have for specific apprenticeships. Also, intentional succession planning. So one of the apprenticeships that I'm going to talk about later on is an apprenticeship that was specifically built to cover those gaps for when an employee retires. So this employer knows that they have a certain position and that person will be retiring. So they wanted to fill that gap, and they felt that having that person mentor the apprentice would be a perfect way to get that person ready for the role to take over once that employee is no longer there. Also, apprenticeships unlock an opportunity for untapped talent. Some overlooked talent can be career changers, veterans, individuals without degrees, or returning workers. And keep in mind that the employer has the ability to make this earn and unearn model successful by intentionally carving out time that the apprentice can have classroom training. So it keeps that work-life balance going, which is very enticing for many employees these days. All right, so how do we as a team work together for that follow-up and follow through as we make contact with our employers? So our first point of contact is mostly our business service team. They work directly with local employers and organizations to understand their workforce needs and connect with resources like WIOA programs, and they discuss the benefits of apprenticeship programs. The business team offers solutions for training, upskilling, and building talent pipeline. So the business service team does that initial outreach. And then once that is done, then I come in with that technical support. So our business team does events, lunch and learns, cold calls, job fairs, opportunities that are for employers, also for employees and participants. We get community partner referrals, and then we do these presentations, that are similar to this, to help me then come in and follow up with more of that technical assistance need. Right. And so the way that I have modeled it, or the way that I have worked through following up with an employer, is I like it to be relatively simple, so that way I know what's next and I map it out. So let's say that a referral comes from a business service team member. We usually, after the business service representative goes and talks to the employer and there's more interest, then we'll have a follow-up meeting, and that's generally in person, and we'll go together. And then, during that meeting, I'll provide, a sample work process schedule, depending on where we are in the process. So if I know a little bit about that role or what they're looking for, then that's how I'll do it. Otherwise, after that first meeting, we'll talk about occupations. And then at a follow-up meeting, I'll have all those sample work process schedules ready. And then that usually takes about a week or two, depending on how many occupations or how complex it is. And then we have a follow-up meeting. Generally, it is virtually. It doesn't really happen that we have another in-person meeting during like the development phase of it. So as long as we plan out a specific timeline. So if we have our follow-up meeting, then I'll usually say, okay, I'll get this to you in a week, and then we can talk about it, and then I'll follow up after that. And then it's important to talk about different training programs in the area, generally using other employers or organizations as an example of what's already out there. If it is very complex or different or unique, then we will talk about what it looks like for the training to take place in-house, and how to get resources and how to build that in-house training program. Once all the information is documented, I will usually fill out all the documentation that needs to be submitted to Department of Labor. So I'll do a lot of that legwork ahead of time so that the employer doesn't have to worry about that piece, because that sometimes seems to be a concern, or, an area of like, that people seem to be afraid of or, apprehensive to go to the next piece, knowing that there's a lot of paperwork. But if we do a lot of that, then it makes the process a little bit easier. And then once all that's said and done, then we will contact and submit all that information to our Department of Labor representative if there are no questions before then. I have also, developed like an apprenticeship checklist for the employer. So just an easy roadmap, the way that apprenticeships are set up, the way I like to explain it is it's a roadmap for the employee. They know where to start, they know the middle ground, and then they know the finish line. And so it's similar to this, checklist for the employer, right? So, I say, initially we're going to go over the occupation. We're going to talk about that job description, which in our language is that work process schedule. We're going to explore the trainings and credentials that you want to pair up with this occupation. We're going to complete that work process schedule. We're going to choose that training provider, or we're going to create that training, or I'm going to help you. I'm going to get you some resources so that you can create that internal training. And then review the wages and that progressive wage schedule. What we do with that is we use our internal software that we have to collect that wage data to give an example of what those occupations are paying in our region. And this gives an employer an idea of where they can start or what their finished product can look like when that person is done with that apprenticeship. And I feel like this has been a great added value because sometimes this is a spot that people get stuck. It's like, where do I get started? How much is the starting pay and where can I end up? So giving them idea of where to start gives them an idea how to roadmap it and then where they want to end when that apprentice is done. And then, then at the end of the whole process, then we will submit all the documentation to the Department of Labor. So getting all of those different things done and outlined for the employer also makes it so that it's a smoother process. All right. So we would not be able to grow and expand any of our apprenticeship programs if we didn't have partnerships with different organizations in the area. So all these partnerships either are organizations that we have worked with and supported, or organizations that we collaborate with to get referrals or connect with other employers or organizations in the area. So one of our biggest partners is Rock River Tooling and Machining Association, our RVTMA. They are an intermediary, and so they focus on manufacturing apprenticeships. And so the way that we've collaborated is one, creating new occupations, and two, supporting with bringing on new apprentices into the program. We've also collaborated and worked with our community college, Rock Valley College, in developing curriculum, partnering up to see what programs are available and which ones are the appropriate ones to connect with our employers. IMEC is a big one. IMEC has been very supportive, and they also know a lot about WIOA funding, and they know about apprenticeships. So Dean over at IMEC is always a great resource and is always connecting us to new employers in the area. The Greater Rockford area of commerce, they are also great to partner up with different projects and different collaborations that we have with them. Regional 1 Planning Council, our Birth to 5 program with an early childhood apprenticeship that we're working on. Other LWIAs, that has been a lifesaver, especially as someone who was new to the whole program and idea of like WIOA and LWIA. So reaching out to different LWIAs on what they're doing and how they get it done has been very resourceful. There have been times where I'm working on a project and then it gets stalled because I don't know where to go next. And so having the availability to reach out to other LWIAs for guidance or how they overcame that obstacle has been great. Our Career Education Associates of North Central Illinois, which is CNC, that's another one that gives us the opportunity to partner up and collaborate with different high schools in the area. And so another big partnership that we have is with our local school district. And so Karen is going to present to us a project that we have going in the LWIA that she's worked on very hard and collaborated with an employer in the area and our local high school. So go ahead, Karen.
Perfect. Thanks, Bernice. So as she mentioned, my name is Karen and I direct our youth workforce development group. So we work with typically about 16 to 24-year-olds. And, definitely since Bernice has been on our team here, we've been working on trying to implement more pre-apprenticeships and more apprenticeships. We see challenges for students who maybe have some of the training, but have none of the experience to be able to get jobs. So this is a really great opportunity to have both, to be able to have them on the ground, being able to learn those skills, and then also to have connections with those potential employers to then take them onto their next step after high school. So this partnership came about, again, as she had mentioned, with one of our local hospitals and one of our local high schools. The pharmacy tech program had recognized and seen the stats according to the American Pharmacy Association reports. They reported vacancy rates of anywhere from 21 to 30% within all of the pharmacies that had been targeted. And nearly 1 in 10 pharmacy directors have lost 41% or more of their pharmacy tech staff. So they recognized that the field in general was facing a really severe shortage. And kind of as Bernice had mentioned earlier on, this was an opportunity for them to be able to fit their individual needs. They recognized that they themselves were facing some of the same statistics of vacancy as other farm tech programs throughout the country, and they wanted to be able to address their specific needs by offering this program. So UW Health and Harlem High School collaborated for this program. And what it was a 60-hour summer internship. For Harlem, this was a requirement for the seniors. This particular group of seniors was registered in a workforce development class, and each of them were required to do 60 hours of their internship in their desired field. So that's why you'll see kind of the 60-hour layout was for that to meet that initial criteria for that class. So for what UW did was kind of came up with this layout. They decided that they felt that it would be best to do about 40 hours of didactic work. And again, you can see kind of what they covered. They did the basic role of pharmacy tech terminology, ethics and communication within the medical field, pharmacy calculations, regulations and state laws, medication safety, as well as anatomy, physiology, and pharmacology. And then each of the students then also did 20 hours of clinical work. And what was really great about this was that they got to experience different locations within UW. And the main ones that they did were the main hospital downtown, which was UW. They did the Carbone Cancer Center. They did home infusion. And then they also had the opportunity to do house outpatient. Originally, we started with about 18 students, but just with circumstances, we ended up with 16. So each of them had a set schedule where they did didactic in the morning, and then they went to different clinicals after that. And they all were kind of on a rotating basis so that each of them would be able to have experience at each of those 4 locations. So the overview idea behind this internship, again, you'll see with the summer internships, they did that for about 3 weeks in June. The kids were out of school at that point, so they were able to do about 20 hours a week for those 3 weeks in June. Rising seniors is what we targeted. Again, those who were going into their senior year. Again, the idea is UW wanted them to be close to being done with high school so that they could potentially draw them into the workforce once their senior year was done. 40 hours of the didactic, 20 hours of the clinical. And then what was really great is our program partnered with them so that we could pay for the participants to get paid during their internship. And then all of the graduates earned the pharmacy technician license that came through their 60 hours through UW. The pre-apprenticeship portion, so out of those 16, UW chose about 8 of the students to continue on. And that was an internal decision based on attitude, attendance, how did they connect with the staff on UW. And so those 8 students were then chosen to basically continue on to do a pre-apprenticeship. And they were able to do about 290 hours of additional experience. And then they had about 100 hours of self-study that they did. We had 6 students who did the fall semester, and then we've got 2 who just started this week for the spring semester. Ultimately, UW is hoping that we'll have at least somebody who is interested in going on to being an apprentice after they graduate. I have not heard a name yet, or if they have made a decision, but again, because they've got students in this semester, I don't know that they'll make that choice until the end of the semester. But ideally, they would love to have somebody from this internship and then the pre-apprenticeship to actually stay on as an apprentice. So you can see here our picture. We did have a couple of students who are missing, but this is the majority of our cohort. And one of the really great things too that our partnership was able to provide is, we do a lot of supportive services for our participants. We recognize that there's a lot of things in life that can keep us from getting to school or getting to work. And we didn't want that to be a hindrance for these students. So we were able to purchase all of them scrubs. That was not something that UW had thought about. And so when I had my initial meeting with them, I let them know that that's something that our program can help pay for. And this will help kind of set the interns apart from the normal staff. And so they all got a matching set of scrubs. And then another thing that our program was able to provide was transportation assistance. So each of these students got a prepaid mobile gas card at the beginning of the internship to be able to help them get to and from all of the locations that they were going to. And so this is the success picture of our cohort.
Thanks, Karen. All right. And so, for other programs that we have in progress and programs that we have developed, some of them are an electrician apprenticeship, and this was a specific apprenticeship that targeted that succession planning for retiring workforce. Tadmore Tailoring, which was an industrial sewing apprenticeship, and this apprenticeship specifically was unique because they created their internal related training, and so everything is done there at the shop. Awaken Foundation for Culinary, we've supported their culinary apprentices get out and finish the apprenticeship and get jobs in that field. Divine Soul was an energy consultant apprenticeship, and as mentioned before, our RVTMA, that manufacturing apprenticeship, is always an ongoing process and project just because they are so large and they're always looking to expand their apprenticeship. Some exciting things that are in the works is, from one of our presentations that the business service team facilitated came RAMP. And so RAMP is a Center for Independent Living to help individuals with disabilities establish successful independent life. And so what we're working on is establishing a pipeline from schools out into the working world in occupations that are specifically tailored for these individuals. And so one of the apprenticeships that we're currently working on to start off is like a surgical cleaning tech. And so one of the local hospitals has already committed to being one of the first employers to trial this and see how it works. And the idea would be that RAMP would be that intermediary, manage several occupations and apprenticeships and partner up with those employers that in the area that are willing to support and be part of the process. With Boone County, we're working on a firefighter apprenticeship, and this one's also exciting because it also takes that intermediary role. And so the idea is the need came because between the ages of 18 and 21, there's a cutoff. So you can't be a firefighter until you're the age of 21. And so what that means is that they're losing talent that are, between the ages of 18 and 21. And so this apprenticeship would prepare them and get them ready for that credential so that they can go on to be firefighters in the area. So we are currently in the development phase of that. So that's very exciting. Hand in Hand Early Childhood Center. This has been an ongoing effort that started out with Birth to 5, and we're finally getting there to the finish line to get it all submitted to the Department of Labor. So that should be exciting. Health and Services Occupation with FHN, and then our big one, which is CEJA, which is our clean energy efforts, and that will be also working with the CEJA program to get any clean energy apprenticeships going and off the ground. So, some ways that we've used, some funding that we've used to support apprenticeships, whether it's new or it's ongoing to get new apprentices going, um, is, tuition reimbursement for program expansion, curriculum development funding. So, for like Tadmore Tailoring is a perfect example of this. Training costs and membership cost support. So we have an apprenticeship that is that has already been registered with Department of Labor, but they never had a cohort. And so, they're hoping that with the support of, Train the Trainer funding, we can help them fund some of that in-house training that they have going. OJT funds and commit worker training funds and work experience for pre-apprenticeship support, kind of like the partnership with UW and Harlem High School. All right, so some of the challenges faced when we're creating apprenticeship, I think a big one is the cost to employers. Employers always want to know what are the costs that come with it, and how much they have to pay. And so generally we talked about some of those WIA funding that we can offer to help support those apprenticeships, and then ongoing, talking about the sustainability of it. So it's a conversation to have with leadership in different employer organizations. And then the time and effort and commitment to employers to manage and support apprenticeship programs and apprentice tracking. That is a big one. And I think that one has been a challenge for employers and for myself. So I think not being too familiar with different tracking systems is a challenge, because that area I kind of lack some of that knowledge. And so when an employer says, what tracking system is usually used, or what tracking system would you recommend, usually I kind of let them know what other employers have used, but I don't have that firsthand experience. And so a lot of times when employers are hesitant to get started with that process, we talk about that time and effort that it'll take to track an apprentice. And so sometimes that seems to be, sometimes something that they don't want to do. So being able to encourage them and make it a seamless process, is helpful. And then initially, when I first started in this role, that apprehension of Department of Labor involvement, I think that being that apprenticeships have been, such a big thing and growing and developing, I haven't heard that as much. So I think that has kind of dwindled a little bit, but it's that tracking and ongoing development that I think is, can be kind of seen as a hardship for some employers. And future goals. So, I think that learning about apprenticeships and understanding our region was big in the beginning. And I think now that the word is out there, I think Nate said it one time, it's, apprenticeships are this model where, word of mouth is good and people come to you. So a lot of employers come to us to talk about and learn about apprenticeships. And so I have also found that being able to find more of those organizations that want to be intermediaries has really, really been beneficial. Like RAMP is a perfect example where they want to take the lead in being that intermediary and monitoring and being that middle person to support the employer and also, support that incoming talent. So I think that we have really focused on our efforts in that regard. And I would like to continue to do that so that we can continue to have other intermediaries, because generally a lot of times it can be that the school or the, like the community college a lot of times takes on that role for intermediaries. And I have found that finding that sweet spot with intermediaries has really, really been beneficial, because then it involves the employer. It gives the employer the opportunity to have apprentices, build an apprenticeship occupation without feeling nervous about that tracking and, figuring out how to do everything on their own. And that is it. Any questions?
Nate, I know sometimes you have a soft question, but I'm curious because it looked like you had a lot of different industries represented. Um, so I'm curious if you found like how the conversations and what you need to kind of show up ready for looks differently when you're working with healthcare versus a manufacturer versus maybe someone who's more of like an office type of environment, and how maybe that preparation process or initial outreach looks different based on like industry.
Yeah, so I think those like industries like early childhood and you know, occupations like that are a little bit easier to develop as far as that related training part goes. And so the conversation centers around who do you want to use for the training versus manufacturing can be a little bit more vague, and you're kind of looking to see what trainings out there fit better. So it's not as mapped out. So there tends to be a little bit more of that research to go, behind that manufacturing piece. Although it may seem like it's more straightforward, sometimes it's not.
Jordan, how dare you accuse me of, a lack of journalistic integrity by implying my questions are softballs? Now I got to ask about like differential equations or something just to redeem my ethics. No, thank you for your presentation, Bernice. What is one thing you will say has surprised you since starting work on this apprenticeship? Obviously, you have, a background in social work and some other business outreach work. Has there been anything that, caught you off guard, either about the process of working with employers or apprenticeship in general?
So I think one of the first things that I feel like I was surprised by was by, and like you said, working with different organizations and a lot of them state and federal. uh, I think it was surprisingly easy to get things submitted to Department of Labor. I think when I heard Department of Labor, I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so painful. And it really isn't. It really is a relatively seamless process because everything is laid out. So I was really surprised, happily surprised that that was the case. I also have to say that our Department of Labor representative is very accessible. So that's great. That's really good.
And who is your ATR, just for those in the chat who aren't familiar with our incredible ATRs in Illinois?
Nakia is our ATR. So we had Meredith that for a bit. So she was our ATR when I came in. I know we had someone else in the region who I didn't meet, but Meredith was one in the beginning, and now it's Nakia.
I have a question, Bernice. This is Sarah in LWIA 1. I heard you mention your involvement with your CJA group. Have you guys identified any specific employers yet that have reached out, asking about apprenticeship opportunities?
So we have had employers reach out, not specifically about apprenticeship opportunities. It's so new that the bridge training just started. So we're kind of moving on to that next phase for like the OJTs and then possibly those apprenticeships that will fit in with these jobs.
Thank you.
I will mention that we were working on, a parent to teacher apprenticeship at some point, and it just kind of was very costly based on like the intermediary that was chosen. And so, that's kind of something that went in the back burner to maybe look at other programs that may be less costly because that one was a little bit expensive. So I think exploring different options to also give to the employers, different options as far as costs go, because I do think now, again, with so much of that apprenticeship expansion, there are different avenues to research and different organizations that would be willing to work with these specific apprenticeships that won't be as costly.
Anyone else have any questions for Bernice or Karen? I'm curious as a former working at a community college kind of before taking on this role. Um, it looks like you also have a list of like a lot of intermediaries that you work with. And I know from my experience is like I kind of knew the LWIA existed and that they did some similar stuff to us, but I know that kind of everyone's like, oh, I have so much work to get done. I don't have time to look outside of what I'm doing. And also, even if you do, getting in contact with the right person and having those discussions and finding out, oh, we're doing the same thing, just slightly differently, can be really challenging, especially with all of our respective workloads. So, do you have like any advice of like starting that process or how you make time to make those connections? Because that's kind of a big burden to get all of those people in a room and agree on certain things and how to approach stuff.
Yeah, I think that that to make that more successful or kind of get that follow through is when I have a smaller meeting. So I have found that if the bigger the meeting, so like the more people that come to the meeting, the less outcomes there seem to be. So the last few meetings that I've had, it's only been like one or two people and we talk about it. And then it just seems like it kind of gets more momentum because then it's specifically assigned to those certain people and then it gets the ball rolling. So keeping it small I have found that it has been key to, get things going. And then the other thing is that I do think that a lot of organizations have or employers do have a sort of apprenticeship model. It's just not official. It's not on paper. So when I bring that up and I say, oh, well, you're already doing this and you're already doing that, it just seems a lot more easy, with that firefighter apprenticeship that we have going. One of the things I heard was like, oh, why does it seem so easy? And it's like, well, because you're already doing all of this. You're just missing this one piece and this other piece. And if we put it all together, now it's official and we can register with the Department of Labor. So I think a lot of times the effort and the work's already out there. They just don't realize it. And when we can put it together for them and say, yeah, now here it is, it does make the process a lot simpler.
Seems like there's no additional questions. Nate, any last comments before we wrap up today?
No, I really appreciated, especially your insight about those smaller meetings, Bernice. I know I've definitely found if I go to an employer and I sit down at the table and there's 8 people, then well, this is going to be at least 2 more meetings till we actually get anything done. But when you can find that person who really wants to invest their time internally with making it happen, that's always a win. So that definitely resonated with me, and I'm sure with other business engagement folks on the call. So.
Yes, thank you again to both of you for joining today. Reminder, this will be posted online on apprenticeshipillinois.com, so you can share it. The slide deck should be uploaded here by the end of the week as well. Contact information is also in the slideshow as well. And hopefully see you at the next session and have a great wintry day, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Bernice.